Burnt offerings were given to atone for the sin of man. Atonement means covering. When it comes to covering, you have to remember the word nakedness. Nakedness is what brought sin, and sin to man is nakedness, meaning a man, by the reason of sin, appears before God to be naked. When they sinned, they ran to hide in the bush. And they said they realized they were naked. So sin is the realization that you are naked. And so God had to look for a way to cover that nakedness of man. To do that, God had to kill an animal, skin it, and cover the man with the skin. Initially, he was covered. He had no skin on the body, but he was covered. So the original skin had been stolen away, and he needed another skin to cover his nakedness. So the burnt offerings, in real sense, as they make atonement for the man, they are a covering on the man so that the nakedness does not appear to be there. But remember, it is not God who sees him naked. It is himself who sees himself naked, because nothing had changed. When God created him, he was just like that. He had not changed. It is the realization, it is the understanding that has changed. And that understanding is what God was after, covering, when he brought about the burnt offerings. Just the way God skinned the animal and covered the man with his skin. The burnt offerings, before they were offered, they were skinned. So the skin is a representation of the whole of the burnt offering. Now, several people, several men of God in the Bible went around clothed in skin. But the major ones, well articulated, are Adam, the first man, who God covered with his skin, and Elijah, the great prophet. From there, we come to the greatest prophet of all, John the Baptist. These are the people that are explained by scriptures that were covered, adorned with the skin. Now, these men were closest to God because of the covering. Why? Because God is the one who made the skin. And the skin covered the nakedness of man in the sight of God. God did not see the man naked, but because of his perception and understanding, due to sin. That was the fruit of sin. So it was that sin that was to be covered for him to have the confidence again to stand before God. Remember, Adam went to hide in the bush saying he was naked. So nakedness steals confidence away from man such that he cannot stand before God. It must be covered by the burnt offerings that were being offered in the days of Moses. Read the Bible, it is important for us sometimes to reason as we meditate. Let me ask you, what type of an animal do you think God killed to cover Adam with his skin? Do you think that he killed a lion? He killed a cheetah? Do you think he killed a buffalo? Do you think, what type of an animal do you think God killed? Because in those days, all the animals were in the bush. According to my studies of burnt offerings, I find that God might have killed a cow or a goat or a sheep and skinned it to cover their nakedness, because the three have a closeness of representation to the three partitions of a human being, as we shall see in the burnt offerings. A human being is partitioned in three parts. The first part is the body, which is the flesh. The second part is the soul, which is the blood. Then the third part is the spirit, which is the breath. Those are the three partitions of man. And it is important to understand that the three animals that we shall see majorly offered as burnt offerings in the Bible had closeness, as we shall see, to these three partitions of man. So the burnt offerings were meant to atone for sin, meaning to cover the nakedness of man, which is to dress him because he appeared naked, because he became naked in perception, not naked in physical. He was naked in perception, and God is dealing with that perception. Read Isaiah 61 and verse 10 and see the garment of salvation. Isaiah says, I will rejoice greatly in my God, for he has clothed me with the garment of salvation. So that is skin that covered man represents the garment of salvation. And so burnt offerings represents the garment of salvation. Salvation from nakedness and salvation from many things that were taken away from man. It is a restoration, it is a redressing that God was doing. So in Moses' law, being a shadow of the things that were to come, the burnt offerings represent the true garment of salvation that was to come. And this means the skin was the garment of salvation. The skin, it was not known in the Old Testament that it was the garment of salvation. But now we can see that it is a garment of salvation. Let's continue and you shall see what God has really made known to us